Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and I thought this would be a really cool opportunity to put together a top choices video, and this is going to be a little bit different to the past videos that I have done, and the ones that I have done before have usually been my top choices fancast wise for actors and actresses I would like to see play a number of different heroes and villains in potential comic book superhero movies, but I have never actually done a top choices video involving film composers because I'm a huge fan of original movie soundtracks, and some of my favourite soundtracks have been actually better than the movies because that's a real testament to the composer who's providing the score for the movie. And for a really long time now we've seen guys like Jerry Goldsmith, who has provided countless soundtracks for lots of iconic films, but he's forever known for providing the soundtracks for all of the Star Trek movies. Guys like John Williams, who, as we all know, is synonymous with the Star Wars franchise, but he also provided the soundtrack for the original Superman movie. And in recent years we've seen guys like Danny Elfman, who has provided a number of soundtracks for a lot of the Tim Burton movies, especially the Justice League and first two Batman films, Batman 89 and Batman Returns. And we've also seen guys like John Ottman, who has provided the soundtrack for Superman Returns and for most of the recent X-Men movies. And in recent years we've seen guys like Stephen Price, who has provided the soundtrack for Suicide Squad, guys like Rupert Gregson-Williams, who has provided the soundtrack for Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and of course the man himself, Hans Zimmer, who is, in my opinion, the greatest modern composer of all time, who has provided countless classic soundtracks, especially ones like the Dark Knight trilogy, Wonder Woman 84, Inception, Interstellar, you name it. Hans Zimmer is the man and has provided lots and lots of great soundtracks. And all due respect to Marvel, who have provided lots of great soundtracks for the MCU movies over the years, but I find some of them a little bit normal for my liking, although I did enjoy both of the Avengers soundtracks by Alan Silvestri, who did an excellent job with Infinity War and Endgame. But when it comes to providing epic soundtracks, there's nobody who does it better than DC Comics, in my opinion. And you look at the soundtracks they've provided: Superman the movie, which is one of the benchmarks for superhero soundtracks, Batman 89, which again set the standard very high, and we've had recent soundtracks like The Dark Knight, which in my opinion is one of the best ever, Batman v Superman, another great soundtrack. The list just goes on. Recent ones like Wonder Woman, which again, another great soundtrack, and of course the benchmark for soundtracks is for me Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and even recent ones as well like Batman the Killing Joke, the Justice League soundtrack, Batman Mystery of the Batwoman, and Batman the Animated Series, who was provided by the late great Shirley Walker, and a team of other composers such as Lolita Ritmanis, Christopher Carter and Michael McCuston. And in fact, at one point, Christopher Carter actually provided the soundtrack for Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. And we've also seen Christopher Drake provide the score for Spider-Man 3, Batman Under the Red Hood, and most of the Batman Arkham games. And with rumours going around very strong that we could possibly see a Batman Beyond live-action movie for the big screen. Obviously, we've heard the rumours that Michael Keaton could possibly be returning to the role of Bruce Wayne, but as an older version of the character. And I did a video a number of years ago where I put together my own fan cast of actors and actresses of who I would like to see appear in a Batman Beyond live-action movie for the big screen. But this video is going to be my top 5 choices for who I would like to see compose a soundtrack for a Batman Beyond live-action movie. So sit back, relax, and here are my top 5 choices for who I would like to see provide the score. Number 5 for my top 5 choices, and it's none other than Nine Inch Nails frontman himself, Trent Reznor. Now, I remember back in 2000 there was a rumour that we could possibly see a Batman Beyond live action movie, and the guy who was connected to it was Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. Now, Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails was a huge part of the whole industrial music movement back in the late 90s to the early 2000s, and his use of synth work and keyboards would provide the perfect backdrop for a potential Batman Beyond live action movie, because a lot of the Batman Beyond music, if anyone who has seen the animated series will remember that it has got a very heavy synth driven sound, and I think Trent Reznor would be the perfect man for the job to provide a soundtrack for a Batman Beyond live action movie. Plus, you know, Nine Inch Nails has a huge loyal fan base, so you could have that as your selling point and bringing the crowd for a Batman Beyond movie. And plus, Trent Reznor remains a fairly big name in the world of music, and he's also provided a number of soundtracks for video games as well, so I think he would be perfect for the job. Number 4 for my top 5 choices for a Batman Beyond soundtrack, and that is Jan Hammer. Now, Jan Hammer, who is a big name back in the 80s, and he has provided a number of soundtracks for a number of smash hit television shows, especially Miami Vice, which he was a huge part of the success of the show, and he also provided other soundtracks for other TV shows such as Nash Bridges, and plus, anybody who's old enough to remember, Jan Hammer was a member of the classic lineup of the Mother Hishnell Orchestra with John McLaughlin, Rick Laird, Billy Cobham and Jerry Goodman. So I think Jan Hammer would be the perfect man for the job, because there was an episode in Batman Beyond, I think it was the Royal Flush Gang episode called Dead Man's Hand, and there was a moment where Terry McGinnis was using his cell phone to track down Melanie Walker, and there was a moment where the music sounded just like Jan Hammer, and the light bulb went in my head, and I said to myself, you know what, I think Jan Hammer would be an excellent choice to provide the score for a Batman Beyond live action movie, so he'd be the perfect man for the job. And plus, he's a living legend in the world of television, so everybody knows who he is, and it just makes perfect sense to have him be the man to compose all of the music. Plus, he sounds like a one-man band anyway, and a lot of his sound is, he sounds like an electric guitar similar to Jeff Beck, so that would be the perfect backdrop for a Batman Beyond soundtrack, in my opinion. Number 3 for my top 5 choices to provide a Batman Beyond soundtrack, and that is my man, Derek Sherinian. Now, Derek Sherinian, to me, is the greatest keyboard player in metal. He's the whole package. Great composer, unbelievable player. His credentials speak for itself. He's played with Dream Theater, Alice Cooper, Black Country Communion with Glenn Hughes of Deep Purple. He co-leads Sons of Apollo. He fronts his own band, Planet X. He's released a number of solo albums under his name. You name it, this man's done it all, but he has yet to provide a soundtrack for a movie. I would like to see that change, because Derek Sherinian is a monster player, and he sounds like a guitar player. His keyboard solos are very much in the guitar shredding genre, and he is perfect for the job. And plus, because Batman Beyond's music is so heavy and synth driven, especially on the rock side, Derek Sherinian would be the perfect man for the job. And anybody who's seen him live, he's just unbelievable, and he would be perfect for the job. So if anybody's listening out there, if you're thinking about a Batman Beyond live action movie, give the job to Derek Sherinian. He's the man. He would be perfect. And now we move on to number 2 for my top 5 choices for a Batman Beyond soundtrack, and that is none other than the legendary Vangelis himself. Now, Vangelis is a true living legend, not just in music but in movies as well, and he has provided a number of soundtracks for films over the years, films such as Sex Power, Chariots of Fire, which in my opinion is his most iconic score of all time, and of course anybody who remembers, he provided the music for Blade Runner. Now, I remember watching Blade Runner 1 and 2 not that long ago, and I always said to myself that if they ever made a Batman Beyond live action movie, Vangelis would be the perfect man, because in a way he kind of set the bar for futuristic sounds, and if you watch both of those Blade Runner films, they have a very futuristic feel to it, and Batman Beyond is no different. So if Vangelis was the man to provide the soundtrack for a Batman Beyond movie, it would make perfect sense, because Blade Runner and Batman Beyond are very, very similar, even though Blade Runner was out years and years before Batman Beyond was even thought of. So it would bring everything full circle in a way, and plus a lot of the Batman Beyond music, if you've watched the animated series, has a very deep electronic sound, and of course Vangelis is the master of electronics and electronic sounds, so I think he would be the ideal man for the job. So just as I said earlier, anybody listening out there, choose Vangelis to be the man for the soundtrack. He would be perfect for the job. And finally, at number 1, my number 1 choice to compose a soundtrack for a Batman Beyond live action movie is Gary Newman. Now, Gary Newman I have always had a lot of great respect for, and his work from the mid-70s to the early 80s was very groundbreaking to me, because a lot of those early albums combined industrial, rock, pop and other genres all into one package, and when you hear Gary Newman, you know straight away it's him. And I remember listening to an album of his called Pure from 2000, and I couldn't help but notice that a lot of the sounds and textures that Gary Newman used for his music was very close to the kind of style of music that Batman Beyond was using for their animated series at the time. And whoever asks me, or any conversations I've had with people, whenever the question comes up about who would be your ideal person to compose a Batman Beyond live action movie soundtrack, my answer is always the same: Gary Newman, because listening to Pure, I always call it the Lost Batman Beyond soundtrack, because it's such a deep, heavy, rich sounding album, and the production on that is just out of this world. And I've seen Gary Newman live once, and it was one of the best shows I've ever seen, and he would be the perfect choice to compose a Batman Beyond live action movie, because a lot of his later stuff from the 2000s onwards is very close to what Christopher Carter, Static X and Mephisto Odyssey were doing for Beyond at the time, so he would be the ideal man for this monumental project. And not a lot of people probably know who Gary Newman is unless they were around the 70s to the 80s, but he's quite a big respected man and respectable name, so he would be the ideal man for me, in my opinion. And the thing is, with Gary Newman, he's still going very, very strong, and he's achieved real major success with his last few albums. And I think a Batman Beyond live-action movie with Gary Newman providing the soundtrack would be the icing on the cake for him, in my opinion. And here are some honourable mentions for other musicians I'd like to see work with Gary Newman. And the first one is cello player, the lovely Tina Guo. Now, Tina Guo I'm a huge fan of, and I always call her the queen of the soundtracks, because whenever you buy a soundtrack, no matter what movie it is, you'll find Tina Guo's name on there, and she's very, very talented. Aside from being very attractive, she's an amazing cello player, and anybody who listens to the Wonder Woman soundtrack and listens to the Wonder Woman theme, you'll hear that's Tina Guo. That's not an electric guitar, that's her electric cello, and she's got a very tribal sound to her playing, and it's very animalistic, and anyone who watches her on stage, she's a monster of a player. And I think if you was to put Gary Newman and Tina Guo together, I really think they could achieve something monumental, because Tina Grow, she's not just a cello player who plays a bit of classical music like something for Gladiator. She can really rock her ass off, and I think with the two of them together they could really come up with something very special. Because think about it, Tina Grow sounds like an electric guitar anyway, and Gary Newman's synth sounds and textures combined with Tina Grow's screeching animalistic cello playing for the Batman Beyond theme, just talking about it and hearing it in my head, it could really work. And I'm a huge fan of both of them, but more so Tina Grow, and she would be perfect for this kind of movie in my opinion. And also she's contributed to a number of DC movies over the years: Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, the Dark Knight trilogy. You know, she's worked very closely with Hans Zimmer, so she knows a thing or two about superhero movies. And as I said, I think Gary Newman and Tina Grow together could really cook up a real storm of a soundtrack for Batman Beyond, in my opinion. And one more honourable mention I'm going to throw in there is Lisa Gerrard. Now, Lisa Gerrard, I think with her, Tina Grow and Gary Newman together, they could really cook up something big. Now, Lisa Gerrard is not what you would call your typical singer, because she can sing, but it's what she does with her voice that makes her very unique. She has a very strong vocal range where she's able to create these deep, monstrous, haunting sounds. And if you listen to the Gladiator soundtrack, you'll hear a lot of Lisa Gerrard in that music, because I'll give you an example. When you hear Lisa Gerrard, it's not just la 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 like you would hear with any other lovely singer. When you hear Lisa Gerrard, it's more like this, you know. And I think with her haunting vocal range, Tina Grow's animalistic cello playing, and Gary Newman's synth soundscape, I think that could be the ideal team to put a soundtrack together for Batman Beyond for the big screen. Because Lisa Gerrard's very highly decorated, she's sang on a number of soundtracks. As I said, she's probably best known for singing with Hans Zimmer for the Gladiator score, but I think for Batman Beyond, I think she could really add something to it. Because let's say, for example, Terry McGinnis, there's a scene like Terry McGinnis goes into his house and he finds Warren McGinnis dead, and Lisa Gerrard's voice could provide that sort of haunting sound, and I think it could work. And you know, I'm a huge fan of Lisa Gerrard anyway, and I think with her, Tina Grow and Gary Newman, we could really be onto a real winner. But that's just my choices, but I think with the three of them together, it could definitely work, in my opinion. And there you have it, everybody. That's my top 5 choices for who I would like to see compose a soundtrack for a Batman Beyond live action movie. Now, obviously, there is no truth in whether or not a Batman Beyond live action movie is going to happen, but if it did, I would definitely go with these choices, because no matter who it is, whether it's the choices I made or whether it's someone else, you're going to get the best, because these guys I've chosen, they're very good at what they do, and I think they would be perfect for the job. So, what do you think of the choices I made for a Batman Beyond live action movie soundtrack? Would you go with these guys, or would you have someone else provide the soundtrack for a Batman Beyond movie? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time. So until then, take care everybody, and stay safe.